Growing up, I never expected my life to be anything extraordinary. In fact, if you had walked into my high school at any point over the last 4 years and asked someone about Anna Carter, they'd probably have squinted, tilted their head, and said, "Wait, who?" I was the quiet girl, the one who always sat near the back in class. Not because I was lazy, but because the less attention I drew, the better. I wore the same faded sneakers for 3 years straight. I had exactly two pairs of jeans that I rotated between, and my hair was always tied up in a simple ponytail. While other girls were experimenting with makeup or gossiping about the latest party, I kept my head down, focusing on my notebooks, my sketchbook, and letters. Yes, letters. Not emails. Not texts. Old-fashioned, handwritten letters, with stamps, envelopes, and ink that sometimes smudged if I got too nervous while writing. They were my escape. My one piece of color in an otherwise gray routine. And they were for one person only, Ethan. I'd never met Ethan in person. We became pen pals when I was 9, part of some elementary school international friendship project, except he wasn't from another country. He lived in another state, just 3 hours away in a small coastal town in Maine. We'd been writing to each other for nearly 9 years. At first, the letters were short and silly. "What's your favorite ice cream flavor?" Or, "Do you have a pet?" But over the years, they grew deeper. He told me about his parents' divorce. I told him about how my dad left when I was 5, and how my mom worked double shifts at the diner just to keep the lights on. He told me about his anxiety before football tryouts. I told him about how sometimes I'd sit in my closet just to cry quietly where no one could hear me. We never ran out of things to say. Ethan became my best friend. The one person who didn't see me as the quiet girl. The one person who didn't make me feel invisible. But as we got older, something about the letters began to change. He started signing them differently. Instead of just "from Ethan," he'd write "yours always, Ethan." Sometimes he'd draw a little heart next to his name. At first, I thought it was just a friendly gesture. But by the time we were 16, his words started to feel heavier, more meaningful. "I can't wait for the day we meet in person," he wrote once. "It'll be the best day of my life." I know it. I kept those letters tucked inside a showbox under my bed. They were my secret, something so personal and fragile that I couldn't bear for anyone else to see. Not even my mom. Especially not my mom. She had a way of twisting anything important to me into something embarrassing. She'd either tease me about it in front of people or act like it didn't matter at all. And if she knew I'd been writing to a boy for years, she'd probably go through my letters, looking for something to judge. So Ethan stayed my secret. That is, until the day that secret burst into the middle of my life like a grenade. Graduation day. I remember sitting in my scratchy blue cap and gown, fidgeting with the tassel as our principal droned on about new beginnings and the bright future ahead. I was half listening, half wondering if anyone would even notice me in the crowd. My mom was in the audience, sitting stiffly with her arms crossed. She told me earlier that morning, "Don't slouch on stage, and try to smile, for once." When my name was finally called, I walked across the stage, shook the principal's hand, and forced a polite grin for the camera. And then, it happened. As I stepped off the stage, I saw him. A tall boy with dark, messy hair, standing near the side of the gym. He wasn't from our school. I would have remembered him. He was holding a small, worn envelope in his hand. And his eyes. They locked on mine like we'd been searching for each other in a crowd our whole lives. It took me a second, but then, my heart almost stopped. Ethan. It couldn't be anyone else. I knew him from the letters, from the way his smile tilted just slightly to the left, from the little scar on his eyebrow he told me about after he fell off his skateboard at 12. But before I could even process the shock, he was walking toward me, fast. And then, right there in front of my entire graduating class, he pulled me into a hug. People were already whispering. And then, "I'm so proud of you," he said, loud enough for the nearby students to hear. "I can't believe this day is finally here." Ethan, I began, my voice trembling. He pulled back, looked me straight in the eyes, and said the words that made my stomach drop to the floor. So, do you want to tell them, or should I? That we're engaged? The gym went silent around me. The whispers became gasps. Someone actually dropped their phone. And I just stood there, frozen, while my world tilted completely sideways. I wish I could say I laughed it off, told him it was some sort of mix-up, and walked away. But I couldn't move. Every sound in the gym, the folding chairs creaking, the camera shutters clicking, the low murmur of voices, felt like it was amplified. I could see people turning in their seats, nudging each other. My classmates, who had barely noticed me for 4 years, were now staring like I was the center of the most interesting drama of the year. I could feel my mom's glare from across the room like a laser beam. I managed to whisper, "What are you talking about?" But my voice came out so thin, I wasn't even sure he heard me. Ethan just smiled, that soft, almost shy smile I'd imagined 100 times while reading his letters, and held up the envelope. "Your last letter," he said. "The one where you said yes." I blinked. "Yes?" His smile faltered just a fraction. "Yes. To marrying me. Anna, we've been talking about this for over a year. You said you wanted to wait until after graduation to tell people. This. This is it." My mind was racing so fast I could barely think in complete sentences. I never wrote that. Not once, in all the years we've been writing, had I said anything about marriage. Sure, I cared about him, maybe more than I'd let myself admit, but engagement? At 17? I opened my mouth, but before I could say a word, my mom was at my side. She didn't look at Ethan at first. She looked at me. Hard. The way she did when I'd left dishes in the sink or forgotten to switch the laundry. Except this time, there was something sharper in her expression. "What?" she hissed under her breath, "is going on?" Ethan turned to her with a polite smile, extending his hand. "Mrs. Carter. I'm Ethan. Anna's." But my mom didn't shake his hand. "Anna doesn't have a fiance." Her voice was cold, almost mechanical. "I don't know who you are or what game you think you're playing, but you need to leave. Now." Ethan's expression shifted, confusion, then hurt. "I'm not playing a game. We've been writing each other since we were 9. I thought, that's enough." My mom's voice cracked like a whip. "You've got the wrong girl." And then she grabbed my arm, hard enough to make me flinch, and started pulling me toward the exit. People were openly staring now, some with their phones up, probably recording. My cheeks burned hot as we pushed through the crowd. I looked back over my shoulder and saw Ethan still standing there, gripping the envelope like it was the last lifeline to a reality he thought we shared. When we got outside into the parking lot, my mom spun on me. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" I yanked my arm away. "Me? I didn't do anything. I have no idea what he's talking about." She narrowed her eyes like she didn't believe me. "So you're telling me you never wrote to that boy?" "Not once?" I hesitated. I did. But her lips pressed into a thin line. "Unbelievable." She ran a hand over her face, muttering something under her breath I couldn't catch. "I didn't say yes to anything," I insisted, my voice shaking. "We've been pen pals for years, but I never." "That's enough, Anna." She glanced around as if afraid someone might overhear. "We're going home. And you are never speaking to him again." And that's when it hit me. She wasn't shocked because some random boy had shown up claiming we were engaged. She was angry because she knew exactly who he was. I could see it in her eyes. The drive home was silent except for the hum of the engine. My mind replayed the moment over and over. Ethan's face, so sure of what he believed. My mom's sudden fury. The envelope still clutched in his hand. When we pulled into the driveway, she cut the engine and sat there for a long moment, gripping the steering wheel. "You don't understand what you've done," she said finally, her voice low. "What I've done?" I asked. "Mom, he's the one who. You will stay away from him." Her tone was final, like a slammed door. I wanted to scream at her. Ask her why she cared so much. Demand answers. But I could tell by the way she was staring out the windshield, her jaw tight, her knuckles white, that I wouldn't get them. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt too quiet, the shadows too heavy. I kept hearing Ethan's voice in my head. The one where you said yes. Finally, around midnight, I slipped out of bed, grabbed my showbox of letters, and spread them out across the floor. 9 years worth of paper memories. I read through every single one from the past year, searching for anything I'd written that could be twisted into a proposal acceptance. There was nothing. But then, as I was stacking them back into the box, something caught my eye, a small envelope at the very bottom. The handwriting looked like mine, but not quite. The loops in the letters were bigger. The ink was darker. And the date in the corner? 6 months ago. My stomach dropped as I unfolded the paper. It was a letter to Ethan. My name was signed at the bottom. But the words on the page, they weren't mine. And right in the middle, in bold, unshakable ink, it said, "Yes, Ethan. 1,000 times yes. I can't wait to start our forever after graduation." I just sat there on my bedroom floor, the letter trembling in my hands. My name was there, written in my handwriting, but my heart knew instantly that those words had never come from me. It was like someone had reached into my life, stolen my voice, and used it to tell a story I'd never agreed to. I stared at the loops of the Y in yes, the way the ink bled slightly into the paper. Whoever wrote this, they had studied how I wrote. Every curve, every tilt of the pen, it was almost perfect. Almost. But there were small mistakes. They wrote their lowercase gs with a full loop at the bottom. I always left mine open. They dotted the is with neat little circles like tiny bubbles. I never did that. Someone had forged this. My chest felt tight. I knew instantly that Ethan had read this letter and believed it, every word of it, because why wouldn't he? For 9 years, he trusted every sentence I'd ever written to him. And now he thought I'd said yes to spending the rest of my life with him. I wanted to throw up. A dozen questions flooded my head at once. Who would even do this? Why? How would they even get my stationery? My handwriting? My mom. The thought hit me like an ice bath. She knew I wrote letters to Ethan. She'd been the one to buy me envelopes and stamps when I was younger. And she had always been suspiciously quick to snatch the mail off the kitchen counter before I got home. But why would she do something like this? I shoved the letter back into the envelope and slid it into my nightstand drawer. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped it. Sleep wasn't even an option. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan's face at graduation, that mix of hope and certainty, and my mom's expression right after, like she'd been caught in something she didn't want me to see. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I was going to talk to Ethan. Not text. Not write. I was going to see him. I'd never told him my exact address. For years, we'd kept things general for safety, but he obviously knew where my school was if he showed up at graduation, which meant he couldn't be far. The problem was my mom. She'd made it crystal clear I wasn't supposed to talk to him again. So I waited. I stayed in my room all morning, listening for the sound of her car leaving the driveway. By noon, I heard the engine start, the garage door groan open, and the sound fade down the street. I grabbed my backpack, stuffed the letter inside, and headed out. The bus ride into town felt like it took hours, even though it was barely 30 minutes. I didn't know exactly where I was going, just that I had to start at the most logical place, the motel just outside of town. If he traveled here for graduation, he had to be staying somewhere. The clerk at the front desk was maybe 20, with dyed blue hair and a piercing in her eyebrow. "Can I help you?" she asked, looking me up and down. I hesitated. I'm looking for someone. His name's Ethan. Tall, dark hair. He might have checked in yesterday." She raised an eyebrow. "I can't just give out guest info." I panicked. "I'm his sister," I blurted out. It's kind of urgent. Her expression softened just a little. Room 214. Don't tell anyone I told you. I muttered a quick thank you and climbed the stairs, my heart pounding. When I knocked, the door opened almost immediately. And there he was. Ethan. Up close, he looked exactly like the boy I'd imagined for years, except now, he was real. His hair was messy, like he'd been running his hands through it all morning. His eyes lit up when he saw me. Anna, he breathed, stepping back so I could come in. I didn't waste time. I pulled the forged letter from my bag and held it out. I didn't write this. His smile faltered. What? This letter, the one you said was my yes. I didn't write it. Someone else did. He took it from me, scanning the page, his brows knitting together. But it's your handwriting. It's close, I admitted. But look, see how the G loops? And the dots on the I's? That's not me. He looked between the letter and my face, and I could see the moment doubt started to crack through the certainty he'd carried. So, you're saying you don't want to marry me? The words stung, even though I knew they shouldn't. Ethan, I care about you. A lot. But we've never even met until yesterday. This isn't how. He sank onto the bed, running a hand through his hair. I don't understand. Why would someone fake this? I don't know, I admitted. But I think my mom has something to do with it. His eyes shot up to mine. Your mom? I nodded. She's controlling. She's always hated the idea of me having anything she can't keep track of. If she thought we were getting too close, maybe I stopped, because even saying it out loud felt insane. But then Ethan said something that froze me. Anna, I didn't just get a letter. I got a phone call. My pulse spiked. From who? He swallowed. Your mom. A month ago. She said you were too shy to say it directly in your letters, but that you'd been telling her you wanted to marry me. She said she was giving me her blessing. I felt the blood drain from my face. My mom hadn't just forged a letter. She'd called him. She'd pretended to speak for me. Why? I whispered. Why would she do that? Ethan's voice was low, almost afraid. She said. She didn't want us to make the same mistake she did. I stared at him, my mind spinning. What mistake? He hesitated, and then handed me something from his duffel bag. Another letter. Older, yellowed at the edges. The return address on the back wasn't mine. It was my mom's. I stared at the old envelope in my hands. The paper felt soft with age, the kind of worn smoothness you only get when something's been handled and maybe reread 100 times. The return address was my mom's handwriting. Not almost her handwriting. Not forged to look like hers. It was hers. Where did you get this? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, rubbing the back of his neck. It was with some of your old letters. I figured it was just part of your earlier ones. Until I looked closer. I slid the paper out. My mom's handwriting filled the page, looping and confident, nothing like the half-scribbled grocery list she left on the fridge now. Dear Ethan, I hope you're doing well. I know Anna's been writing to you about school and life and all that. She doesn't know I'm sending this, but I wanted to tell you something from my side. I think you're good for her. You remind me of someone I knew when I was younger, someone I lost before I ever got the chance to tell him how I felt. I froze, reading the next line. I don't want Anna to make the same mistake I did. If you care about her, tell her. Don't wait. Life is too short to be cautious. The rest of the letter rambled about trust, about not letting distance get in the way, and then ended with a postscript. I'd be proud to call you my son-in-law one day. I looked up at Ethan, my mind reeling. She sent this to you. When? He hesitated. 2 years ago. I felt my throat tighten. And you never told me? I didn't know if she wanted you to know, he said quickly. It made me think you felt the same way, but maybe you just didn't want to put it in writing yet. I thought she was just helping things along. helping things along, or controlling the narrative entirely. I pressed my hand to my forehead, trying to steady the rush of thoughts. My mom, who never let me stay over at friends' houses, who once grounded me for a week for not answering my phone in under 2 minutes, had inserted herself into my most private friendship, shaping it into something I'd never agreed to. But why? I decided then that I wasn't leaving this motel room without answers, even if I had to drag them out of her. When I got home later that afternoon, her car was already in the driveway. My stomach twisted. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, sipping coffee like she hadn't just detonated a bomb in my life. "I saw him," I said flatly. Her mug froze halfway to her lips. "Ethan?" "Yes. And I know about the letters. And the phone call." Her eyes flickered, just for a second before she set the mug down. "Anna, I told you to stay away from him." "You lied to him," I said, my voice rising. "You pretended to be me. You made him think I wanted to marry him." She straightened, her tone icy. "I did what I had to do." "What does that even mean?" For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she sighed and leaned back against the counter, her expression shifting into something I didn't recognize, almost vulnerable. "When I was your age," she began, "there was a boy. His name was Daniel. He was my best friend. We wrote letters all the time because my parents didn't approve of him. He wasn't from the right kind of family. We kept it a secret for years." Her gaze drifted to the window, somewhere far away. "I always thought we'd have time. That one day I'd tell him how I really felt. But then, there was an accident. He died before I ever said the words out loud." Her voice caught, just slightly, before she recovered. "I wasn't going to let you make the same mistake I did." I stared at her, my heart pounding. "So you decided to, what? Manufacture a proposal?" "I nudged you," she insisted. "You and Ethan have been writing for almost a decade. I saw the way you lit up when his letters came. You think I didn't notice? You're just like me, Anna, scared to take a risk, scared to speak up." I shook my head. "No. You don't get to rewrite my life just because you regret yours." Her jaw tightened. "One day, you'll thank me." I couldn't listen to another word. I grabbed my bag and stormed to my room, slamming the door behind me. That night, I sat on my bed staring at Ethan's number on my phone. For years, our voices had only existed on paper. I'd never heard him laugh, never heard what my name sounded like when he said it out loud. Finally, I pressed call. He picked up on the second ring. "Anna? I want to tell you everything," I said. "No letters. No parents. Just us." And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was doing something for me. The after party for graduation wasn't exactly my scene. Music thumped from the rented community hall, laughter spilling out onto the sidewalk where clusters of students stood in glittery dresses and awkward suits. I'd only come because I knew Ethan would be there. We'd agreed on the phone. No more confusion, no more third parties. We were going to talk face to face, uninterrupted. But what I didn't expect was that he'd invited someone else. When I walked in, I saw him by the punch table, standing next to a woman I recognized instantly from photos he'd sent me in his letters. His mom. Ethan spotted me and waved me over, that same crooked smile tugging at his lips. "Anna. This is my mom, Claire." She shook my hand warmly. "So, you're Anna. I feel like I know you already." I managed a polite smile, but my stomach was tight. "You do?" Ethan glanced at her, then at me. "My mom knew your mom. A long time ago." The words hit me like a cold wind. Claire nodded slowly. "We went to the same high school. We weren't close, but I remember her. And I remember Daniel." That name again. The boy my mom claimed she'd loved. Claire's expression softened. "Daniel was my older brother." It was like the air got sucked out of the room. "What?" I whispered. She nodded. "He died when I was in college. Car accident. Your mom and I spoke at his funeral." I didn't realize until recently that she'd named her daughter after the song they danced to at prom. Anna's song. I felt like my brain was short-circuiting. My mom had named me after some lost love, and had spent my entire life trying to script me into the ending she never got. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. She never told you? I shook my head. My mom had never told me she knew Ethan's family, let alone that the boy she'd loved was his uncle. Suddenly, all of her interference made a twisted kind of sense. In her mind, Ethan and I weren't just two pen pals, we were a second chance. Her chance. And that made me angry. Angry that she'd hijacked my story. Angry that she'd used her regrets like puppet strings to move me where she wanted. Angry that she'd stolen years of honest communication from me and Ethan by slipping herself into the middle. I looked at Ethan. I care about you. I always have. But I can't be a replacement for your uncle. And you can't be the fix for my mom's past. His eyes were full of something between sadness and understanding. I don't want you to be a replacement, Anna. I just want you. The real you. Not the version your mom's been trying to create. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. Then we start over. No old letters. No pressure. Just us. Friends. And if something happens, it happens. He smiled, not the hopeful, dreamy smile from graduation day, but a smaller, more grounded one. I'd like that. When I got home that night, my mom was waiting in the kitchen. I braced myself for another round of manipulation, but she didn't say anything at first. Finally, she asked, "Did you see him?" "Yes," I said. "And I know everything. About Daniel. About Claire. About what you were trying to do." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm not you," I told her. "And I'm not living my life as your second chance." Something flickered in her eyes, hurt, maybe, or shame, but she didn't argue. She just turned away and rinsed her coffee cup in the sink. And for once, I didn't need her to respond. Over the summer, Ethan and I texted sometimes, met up once at a diner halfway between our towns, and talked like two people who were figuring things out for themselves. No big declarations. No promises we couldn't keep. I kept the showbox of letters, but I moved it to the very top of my closet, not because I wanted to reread them, but because I needed to remember something important. My story is mine, and no one gets to write it but me.